Hello, I'm Chioma Ikejiani, and it's so good to have you join me on AMOI Unplugged, an interview series that focuses on the diversification of our economy, from oil to the non-oil sector. I welcome you as we explore another sector today. Now, can you guess? Just keep watching. It's AMOI Unplugged, exploring diversity. Well, guess what? It's time to take the cat out of the bag. Its mission is to strategically complement the efforts of government in improving the quality of life for all Nigerians through the investment of lottery funds in innovative projects that respond to the needs of our people. Now you know. Our focus is on the National Lottery Trust Fund, and our guest today is the proactive, diligent, focused, and visionary Executive Secretary, Dr. Bello Maigari. Don't go away, it's all about the Lottery Trust Fund on AMOI Unplugged, exploring diversity.
The mandate to execute projects of good causes across the country for the benefit and well-being of the citizens of Nigeria informs social investment in diverse sectors, including health, education and sport by the National Lottery Trust Fund. With its core values of integrity, trustworthiness, collaboration, inclusiveness and forward-looking with distinctive drive, the agency is providing hospital equipment in different states of the Federation. Its intervention in sports has put smiles on the faces of our school children, sportsmen and women, while the education sector is benefiting with the distribution of first aid cabinets in schools nationwide. The National Lottery Trust Fund is leaving no stone unturned in fulfilling its mandate. National Lottery Trust Fund, a driver for social transformation.
Welcome to AMOI Unplugged, exploring diversity. It's a pleasure to have you here. You know, with so much talk on economic diversification, I am right here at the headquarters of the National Lottery Trust Fund.
You're welcome.
Always wanted to speak with you because living in Canada, lottery is such a big thing, and it's one of the things that I think that we can do well with economic diversification. So thank you for having us, and it's a pleasure to be here. So the first question I'm going to ask you, because while I was doing research, I couldn't believe that you started off in the university sector. So give me a little bit of a highlight of your journey to becoming the Executive Secretary of the National Lottery Trust Fund.
Welcome once again to National Lottery Trust Fund. I must tell you the journey has been very amazing, very challenging and rewarding. Since I was employed in September 1989, shortly after my youth service corps, I had the fortune to join the services of Abubakar Tafawa Balewa University. Then as an administrative assistant. What is interesting is the day I joined, I was asked to take over from a principal assistant registrar.
The day you joined?
Absolutely. A very big office with a whole lot of challenges. That is how I delved into the job. I was covering a lot of committees, all the management committees of the university, where the Vice Chancellor is the chair of those committees. I had the fortune to work with eminent personalities, eminent professors, and former justices in the judiciary. So that is how I began my profession. Shortly after about 7 or 8 years, I joined the services of Nigerian Telecoms PLC also.
How did that happen?
Indeed, one could say it is one's dedication to duties,
Okay.
One's brilliance in getting things done. We always work to ensure that things are done in a manner that it gives efficiency to the system and that service delivery is improved. So in everything that I do, I ensure that I bring excellence to the forefront. And that is why, of course, when my former Vice Chancellor was appointed the Managing Director, Chief Executive of Nigerian Telecoms PLC, the first person he thought of joining him and part of his team is I. And that is how I found myself in Nigerian Telecoms PLC. And that environment is completely different. It is an amazing environment, highly complex because it's a technologically driven organization. I was serving as his senior special assistant on a number of issues, including technical issues. Wow. Indeed, coming from the background that I just told you, I didn't find it difficult in assimilating in the system. And from there on, as soon as the company changed hands, if you recall, there was this policy. Right. To unbundle the organization.
Privatization.
And to privatize it and hand it over to private sector driven, of course, investors. The company went through a lot of evolution. I took the decision to transfer my services to the mainstream public service. And that is how I found myself in the National Lottery Trust Fund.
Wow.
That was in May 2011. I was appointed as a deputy director. And of course, the moment I joined, I was saddled with the responsibility of setting up the Lagos office of the agency.
My goodness.
Which happens to be the hub where lottery and gaming is more prominent, where we have the larger percentage of the operators and licensees. And of course, having had the benefit of an experience in the telecoms industry, and of course, and with the passion that I have to make things better, to promote excellence, I was able to set up the office from the scratch ground up. All the staff that were posted to the office, I got them trained. We virtually established like a blueprint, which eventually was adopted agency-wide.
So you were like the founding staff member of the trust fund?
Yes, I met some couple of staff, about 6 or 7 or so, senior people seconded from the Office of the Secretary to the Government of the Federation. Okay. Yes.
So from there, you worked your way up and...
Indeed, it is amazing for you to note. I haven't spent 6 months there when the position of the Director of Operations became vacant. I didn't apply for it, but somehow through the wisdom of the former Chief Executive, he decided that I should be moved back to Abuja, the headquarters, to take charge of that operations department. Since my joining that department, we have brought in new creativity and innovation. And the few things that the agency has been able to implement, and of course, if you look, the entire agency now is a full-fledged agency.
How many people work, like when you look back to when you were first as a founding staff member, when you look at where you are now, how many people actually work for the National Lottery Trust Fund?
For the Trust Fund, I can say confidently, we are not more than 30 staff, yes. But we gradually grew to almost 600 staff as we speak.
Wow.
Yes. Initially, we started off with 2 departments, but the structure was changed to 3 departments. We have operations department, where I was the former director. Then we have the finance and accounts, which was carved out of human resources and corporate services. So we have 3 tiered departments, fully manned by directors now.
Okay, wow.
With a number of staff working under them, and a number of divisions also, and units.
Looking back, how has the experience been so far?
Well, it is extremely rewarding, I should say, but very challenging. In all these sectors that I've been able to work, I found one key thing that should guide and inspire youth, which is you must be honest, you must be disciplined, and you must work hard to ensure that you bring out the best in you and deliver what is very key for developing and promoting public interest. Because if you don't have those ingredients, it is difficult for you to make it. You will sadly go by the wayside if you are not disciplined. For instance, you fall prey to dishonesty, because that is what indiscipline brings. And if you are not working hard, you cannot definitely bring out the best in you. So it's very key. You must be knowledgeable. You have to have the skill of the moment.
I'd like you to explain what is happening with the lottery industry in Nigeria. There are many preconceived notions, there are many perceptions. Nigeria is a very conservative country.
It is.
And I would like you to explain to my audience the benefits of lottery, but more importantly, why it's actually a good thing for Nigerians to participate in the lottery sector, particularly in these trying times. Because I know when I was away, everybody and anybody plays the lottery. It's a big thing, especially when they roll out the drum on TV. And so how do we get Nigerians to understand that it's not a bad thing? It's actually a good thing to play lottery.
Well, you've answered the question. It is a good thing. And Nigeria's lottery market, Chioma, is one of the world's fastest growing, whose potential, I think, is within the region of almost over 1 trillion naira. It's well over 1 trillion naira as we speak. This is as a result of advances that we have had in technology. We have high internet penetration in the market now, isn't it? And we have a football and soccer loving nation. If you look at any time you visit your village today, you will see that there are betting shops littered across your own street corner. People betting on all the leagues going on across the world. That is how lottery and gaming has caught up with Nigeria.
Because of the new innovations in technology.
Absolutely.
Okay.
What we do as a trust fund is similar to what Petroleum Trust Fund does in those days. We are structured. The only difference is the source of income. Ours is coming from lottery and gaming. The PTF is coming from petroleum, excess crude.
When I was trying to prepare myself for this interview,
yes.
I read about the National Lottery Regulatory Commission. Absolutely. And as I was reading it, I realized that it was the same act that actually created the trust fund. So then I got confused. And one of the questions I would like to ask you is, what are the distinct responsibilities and functions of the trust fund that is different from the commission? Because while I was reading it, I thought, oh, the commission, they're both, but you're completely two separate organizations.
We are, absolutely. We are two separate entities, no doubt. And even the law has clearly demarcated the responsibilities of the two organizations. This is the act. Absolutely. If you look at Section 1, that is where the mandate of the National Lottery Regulatory Commission comes from. And if you look at Section 42 and Section 40, subsection A of the Act, National Lottery Act 2005, that's what I mean, you could see that National Lottery Regulatory Commission was established mainly to be the regulator of the lottery and gaming industry of Nigeria.
Okay.
Meaning...
an umbrella.
Absolutely. It's the regulator of the entire industry. Meaning they are to monitor the every bit and piece of whatever practice that goes on in the industry. They are to also issue licenses and permits to operators so that the industry will not be disorderly.
Okay, like a sheriff.
Absolutely. They are the police
Right.
of the industry. And also, they're expected to guide and ensure that there is standards. For us, the National Lottery Trust Fund, were established to be the custodian of the funds that are going to be generated from lottery and gaming in the country. In fact, the law says from 20% to 27.5%, depending on the age of the operating license of an operator. We should take custody of that and apply it for the promotion of good causes across the country.
So that's really your mandate.
So that is, in a nutshell, our mandate.
Okay.
We are custodians and administrators of the fund of
That's a good
lottery and
mandate.
gaming. It's a very big and huge mandate, given the fact that if you look at the areas covered by the mandate, we're expected to promote, uplift, and advance sports development in Nigeria. We're also expected to promote, uplift, and advance education in Nigeria.
Okay.
Social services, public welfare. We're also expected to provide humanitarian aid, relief, and we're also expected to manage natural disasters in Nigeria. So it's a very broad mandate, which is expected to cover the entire nation, all the nooks and crannies of this nation, our communities, our local government, and our states, all the 36 states of the Federation and the Federal Capital Territory. In fact, that is our policy thrust. Our strategy requires that we must cover the entire nation.
The mandate to execute projects of good causes across the country for the benefit and well-being of the citizens of Nigeria informs social investment in diverse sectors, including health, education and sport by the National Lottery Trust Fund. With its core values of integrity, trustworthiness, collaboration, inclusiveness and forward-looking with distinctive drive, the agency is providing hospital equipment in different states of the Federation. Its intervention in sports has put smiles on the faces of our school children, sportsmen and women, while the education sector is benefiting with the distribution of first aid cabinets in schools nationwide. The National Lottery Trust Fund is leaving no stone unturned in fulfilling its mandate. National Lottery Trust Fund, a driver for social transformation.
Now, having said that, and I know you've been here a long time as one of the founding staff,
Yeah.
what do you feel must be done to ensure adequate performance of the national lottery business in generating more revenue for the federal government, especially now that the government has been screaming each agency, department has a fiduciary responsibility to generate revenue?
Absolutely.
How do you see, what do you think must be done to ensure that kind of performance?
Well, I think the first critical step that we must take as an agency is to synergize constructively with the National Lottery Regulatory Commission in ensuring that there is fair play in the industry. That is one critical thing that we have to do. By that I mean we need to create the enabling environment for lottery businesses and gaming operators to thrive and flourish. As they flourish, and that is when government now will take charge of that particular percentage stated under the law, which is meant to promote social inclusion in the whole country. So by doing that, and of course in doing that, you are expected to look at the law. Where there are weaknesses, you need to amend them. That process has started for long ago. We have a document already prepared, which is meant to go to the National Assembly for legislation to amend these areas to further empower the National Lottery Regulatory Commission and the National Lottery Trust Fund in doing their job to ensure that they increase revenues in geometrically, isn't it? Of course, if these laws are not there, there's no way you can deal with some of the
challenges.
Some of the challenges and illegal practices that are going on in the industry.
Exactly.
We have looked at the law. From our own side, we think that there's an area where we can latch on and address that issue of weakness. If you look at Section 55, subsection 1, 2, 3, both agencies, the Commission and the Trust Fund, were empowered to issue new regulations.
Okay.
So
you're actually, you're given the framework to do that.
Absolutely.
But it's interesting.
Yes.
I'm going to come back and be more specific on that. But I think that before we do that, why do some people feel that if I play the lottery, somehow it's not within my religion to do that? Where does that perception come from?
Well, it is something to do with
because
they
have lottery in Morocco.
They did. They have. We visited a number of jurisdictions globally. We were in Morocco. We were in Nigeria, even our next door neighbor here. And they have an organized lottery market since 1960s.
Wow.
For Nigeria.
Wow.
It will interest you to note that they have different games. There's what they call Hajj Lotto, where if you play it and win, you will get a ticket that takes you to Hajj.
Oh my God!
Yes,
that's
and
smart.
they use the proceeds of lottery to also sink boreholes for their citizens. They build small roads, infrastructure, things like that. In Morocco, when we visited them, they showed us a range of infrastructure built through the process of lottery.
That's amazing.
And of course, that is what we want to replicate here in Nigeria because of the benefits. There's need for us to raise awareness around this particular issue of lottery, being whether it's good or bad, but this is to do with our conservative nature. But I can tell you, anywhere you go in Nigeria today, people are playing lottery and gaming as if they don't think that this is an issue regarding religion.
And it's a win-win situation
for both. It is, absolutely. If you do it, people can only do things when they benefit. So if you play and win, you still win. Part of the proceeds goes to government, where, of course, a project will be built in your constituency.
Talking about building projects in your constituency, you have done quite a number of things in sports and health. And I would like you to explain more on how far you've gone with sports and health sector with the lottery industry.
Well, if you look at the structure of how we are built as an agency, you could see that we are meant to carry out interventions in different sectors of the economy, one of which, of course, is sports. The reason why we targeted sports at the very beginning is because the entire process of lottery comes from sports. The betting that you have is coming from bettings on Premier League, isn't it?
Yes.
Horse racing in other jurisdictions, things like that. So naturally, sports must be built as part of the funding component of lottery. And this is why, if you recall in London, sometimes in 2012, when they hosted the Olympics, over 90% of that particular Olympics, from the funding of athletes coaches, the infrastructure for the
Wow.
games, that is
Wow.
the stadia,
That's incredible.
were funded from the process of lottery. And that has been the theme globally. So we are working to see how we make that happen here in Nigeria, especially when the revenues from lottery and gaming keep increasing. Even though we've started intervening in this sector way back in 2014. If you recall, we had 2014, 2015, when we had presidential directive to procure world-class sporting equipment and distribute to public primary schools across the country. I can tell you over 2,500 public primary schools have benefited from the distribution of this equipment.
And sport unifies.
Absolutely. It is an economic activity too.
I remember you had a program, and there was a young lady, her name was Rosemary. And I'd like you to share that experience, because this is, I believe, what the Lottery Trust Fund does when it does it well.
Indeed, that is an interesting part of our achievement in National Lottery Trust Fund. She came about as a result of hard work, having put in place a framework to finance some few non-governmental organizations, one of which is coming from sports. They are to train athletes of secondary school age. This girl happens to be a product of that academy. And also, she performed excellently well when, of course, she was discovered during the All Africa Games. She went on to beat other countries when she went for the Youth Olympic Games in Argentina, where she won the gold medal. So she is a hopeful for gold in Japan 2020. I can tell you that girl is amazing.
And she's ranked the 11th world fastest. Yeah, amazing.
Youth, as we can speak now.
So that just shows you that the mandate that you've been directed by the presidency is actually working. But as much success as you had, what would you feel in the last 13 years have been a major challenge or a constraint?
Well, we, as an organization, we have not lived up to 30 years. But I can tell you the few years that we've been in existence, that is 13, 14 years ago, one could say has been the issue of harnessing what should come to government from lottery and gaming. That is the greatest challenge. Simply because operators and licensees have not lived up to their obligations. And of course, for reasons to do with lack of enforcement and compliance, and of course for also lack of having the benefit of putting a system in place, that is a platform where you can monitor the transaction operations of these licensees and operators in real time. This we are beginning to do. We are already in the process of unveiling an operator to manage our central monitoring system.
How will that work? That's a technology that you're bringing in, and
absolutely.
You're collaborating with the commission on this.
With the commission, absolutely.
So how would that, right now there's no way to monitor,
yes,
live, real-time way to monitor the operators.
Yes.
So this technology is going to come in, and how will that work?
Well, as you know, other sectors too have done that, like the Federal Inland Revenue Service, of course, other industries like the Nigerian Ports Authority. So it is something that is soon in coming. That is the way to do it. You understand? We have to fix this issue of leakages all around the industry to ensure that government harnesses the revenues that are coming from lottery and gaming. If you remember, lottery is mentioned as one of the key sectors that will form a foothold in the diversification policy of this government.
Absolutely.
So I think in tandem with that, we are working very hard to ensure that lottery and gaming plays a critical role in national development. Most of the revenues that are going to be generated from this sector are going to be channeled towards national development, infrastructure, roads, improving our healthcare institutions, things like that. Of course, we have the capacity to deliver on that. I can tell you confidently, we have all the frameworks in place. We have developed the roadmaps. All we need to do, I think, is to come together as a team to deliver on these objectives for the nation.
But here's the thing, and I'm going to come back to what you talked about earlier.
Yeah.
I'd like you to talk about the role of National Assembly in terms of bringing in a policy framework, a legal framework that can actually give you some muscle, something to bite. If you can give me just a preview of the role that the National Assembly has played. I know they played a role when they created the Act. What more can they do to enable you to continue your mandate? Because the more funds that are brought in, the more good causes you're able to develop.
Absolutely.
So what is the role of National Assembly, and how can they give you that enabling environment to do what you need to do?
It is key. You did mention about the regulatory framework. Of course, the enabling environment cannot work if you don't have key legislation that will enable businesses to thrive and flourish. One key thing is the sharing formula, which has been a very major issue in the industry. Operators claim that 20% is way high. If they are to look at the components of their operating environment, it will be difficult to break even. But that is not the case. We as experts and people in the industry that have knowledge, we know for a fact if you benchmark it with what is happening in the United Kingdom today, over 40% goes to government for good causes.
Really?
40%. I'm telling you, that's what it is. In other jurisdictions, it's even higher.
And what's the number here in Nigeria?
It's 20%.
Wow.
Currently.
That's half.
That is half of 40%. And yet, operators and licensees are
Complaining.
saying, absolutely. So that is not the issue. The issue is, if the legislation can be amended to ensure that licensees play to the game, that will be helpful to these two agencies to actualize their mandate. Because it's not easy for you now to ask an operator, pay off the 20%. If they open their books, you can hardly see anything there without the system in place.
Right.
They will tell you a large chunk of it has been paid off through cost to set up operations, do business with this and that, pay legal, pay employment, employees, things like that. So at the end, you see the cost, operating cost, eating up the entire profits. So of course, that argument cannot fly. But once you have the system, a system like a technology you put in place, a platform that will monitor the entire process, you'll be able to determine what goes to who and how.
Have you moved towards bringing something to National Assembly to finally take to the president? Where is that at now?
We have worked on this, like I did tell you a while ago. We worked on amending these laws some years back. We have a document already prepared, even though we have opened up discussions on some few aspects of the provisions of the law, where we are asked to bring up a few amendments that we think will aid the efficient and effective performance of our agencies. This we've been able to articulate, and we are jointly reviewing that document with the Commission. Hopefully, in the not too distant future, we will present it to our board. When the board looks at it and resolve on it, we'll now send it to the Secretary to the Government of the Federation for onward delivery to, of course, the Federal Executive Council, as it may, possibly to the Attorney General of the Federation, who will now put the document together again and ferry it to the National Assembly, make their inputs, then thereafter it will be passed into law. But so far, I can say it's so good, even though we've not been able to get the revenues that we're expecting from the industry. But you could see that we are making progress, incremental progress here and there, because change is difficult, even though our industry is a little bit peculiar. Most people wouldn't want to associate with it because of what you just told us. But anyhow, we are raising awareness for people to know that it's something that will bring value and benefits to the social well-being of the entire nation. So every aspect of the business must be looked at to see that we harness the potential and channel it towards some of the areas that we did mention earlier on.
The mandate to execute projects of good causes across the country for the benefit and well-being of the citizens of Nigeria informs social investment in diverse sectors, including health, education and sport by the National Lottery Trust Fund. With its core values of integrity, trustworthiness, collaboration, inclusiveness and forward-looking with distinctive drive, the agency is providing hospital equipment in different states of the Federation. Its intervention in sports has put smiles on the faces of our school children, sportsmen and women, while the education sector is benefiting with the distribution of first aid cabinets in schools nationwide. The National Lottery Trust Fund is leaving no stone unturned in fulfilling its mandate. National Lottery Trust Fund, a driver for social transformation.
Well, you know, this is the part of the interview that I'm very excited about because I get to talk to you about the milestones. I know that you've done a lot, but I'd like to hear from you. You've actually looked at the 6 geopolitical zones and you've gone and actually delivered on your mandate, whether it's medical equipment. So let's first start with Kebbi or Jigawa or Nasarawa or Darawa. I know you personally went there and did something in the hospital. So just tell me about the highlights of your major achievements.
It is something that we take pride in the National Lottery Trust Fund. We never anticipated the kind of needs our communities have until when we went round across the nation to get their needs. Every community we visited, the key thing they keep asking government to do for them is to improve their social well-being in different areas. What featured prominently is the issue of health. It is sad to note that some of these healthcare centers do not have even basic equipment to operate.
Was that shocking for you?
It is indeed, because you have fine buildings, but there's no basic equipment to operate. So all you have there is a mere consulting clinic, so to speak. But I'm sorry to use that phrase, but that is what it is. In a particular community, we discovered that their X-ray machine was supplied since 1966. It has stopped working almost 30 years ago. And that is how the clinic, the center, primary healthcare center has been operating. So the need is very comprehensive and pervasive. It's something that you cannot even imagine. So we have crafted the framework to intervene in health. We've started intervening in health, I think, since a couple of years ago. We started off in Jigawa, where we provided basic healthcare equipment to Gumel General Hospital, along with an ambulance. Of course, we were in a lot of other many states across the north. We were in Adama, Bauchi.
What was the common denominator in terms of the need in those states? What did they have in common? Was it the basic, like wheelchair? Was it the basic?
What is common is diagnostic, a lack of diagnostic equipment. You can't, of course, diagnose an ailment if you don't have the basic equipment to do so. You keep receiving referrals to other hospitals to go and get diagnosed, then you bring the result back to the healthcare center or the hospital to treat you. That has been the common denomination across all these communities. Wow. So that is why we now said the best thing to do is to see how we can provide these hospitals with basic equipment, medical equipment. And this we've started to do in a number of states. I did mention Jigawa State. We were in Bauchi.
What was the first one for you? What was the first one that you did, and what was the response like?
Well, if you see, there was this one that we did recently in Daura. In Katsina State. You can imagine the kind of impact that has made to the people of Daura. That particular day we unveiled the X-ray machine. Can you imagine over 50 patients had their...
on that day?
Of course. They kept coming in and going out. This is what it is. And if you visit the hospital now, it is something that has changed the lives of ordinary Nigerians. And this is what I believe Mr. President wants each and every agency to do, to see how they can tackle the issues confronting our people. Those people that cannot afford the basic things in life. And this is why we are now primed to ensure that this happens through this agency.
Now, when you look at the 6 geopolitical zones, like when you go to the north, and I know that you've done Cross Rivers, is it still the same need or is it different? What were some of the things that you saw when you went to Cross River, for example, or when you went to Ebony State? You went to Ebony State?
We were there, yeah. We were in Ebony State. We were also...
This is exciting.
It is, absolutely. It's the same particular need. You can imagine, we'll soon be in Lagos. It's also the same lack of basic medical facilities.
I saw the pictures, the beds.
Absolutely. Beds, of course. And of course, so many things that facilities that is connected with radiology unit, for instance. That's what we were able to set up for General Hospital Daura. The entire radiology unit was repackaged, and new equipment was fitted there. And it's the same thing for other hospitals too. And we are also going to Lagos, Surulere. There's a particular hospital also that requires this equipment. Basic as they are, but they are lacking there. We'll be in Oyo State as well, shortly. We are also preparing to be in a host of other states in the North Central.
How does that work? How do you, is there a committee? How do you choose which hospital or which state, or does it rotate?
No, it is guided by...
a need assessment, I guess.
Absolutely. Yeah. The one I did mention earlier on.
Yeah.
We went around the nation, we sampled their needs, we put those needs in a comprehensive program, which we presented to our board, and now board approved and now recommended it to government, which was approved. So the intervention is guided by actual needs on the ground. So the reason why we did that is for you not to fund something that is not needed. It has always been the practice in the past where you now provide resources where at the end of the day you find out that such projects end up as white elephant projects. So this is not our own way of doing things. We must make sure that we double check and cross check that yes, indeed, this particular need will be helpful to you if once we address it, and there will be value to be driven from it. We'll quickly intervene to address that particular need long term.
Now, the president got a mandate, a second term in 2019, May.
Indeed.
You're part of that administration. You're part of the foot soldiers that
Absolutely.
have to steer his leadership.
Absolutely.
What message will you give to Nigerians on what to expect from the Lottery Trust Fund?
A lot.
In the next few upcoming years?
A lot, I should say, because we are just beginning to feel the impact of what lottery can do for Nigerians. As you know, across jurisdictions globally, you've said it yourself, what lottery can do to empower its citizens, to provide infrastructure, to create an enabling environment that will allow businesses to grow in that sector. Our mission and goals will be to ensure that we grow lottery from 1 trillion naira to over 10 trillion naira in the next couple of years.
Wow.
Simply because if the environment is good enough and there is awareness, which of course you've seen that is growing very fast because of advances in technology and innovation in the sector, a lot can be achieved. So expect the next level to be something like where this government will take pride in what lottery and gaming is doing to the nation. This I can tell you is achievable.
What keeps you up at night?
Well, of course, knowing that the next day an ordinary person will receive the best service from the National Lottery Trust Fund. And how do we do that? It's by coming together and ensuring that all the nitty-gritty of the business, from what will empower our youth, from what will bring health care to the doorstep of an ordinary person, to, of course, discovering talented but undiscovered athletes across the nation. This is something that keeps me awake at night, and of course will keep me going for so long in this business that we do in governing this agency.
If you had 2 minutes to address the operators, for example, because I know you've mentioned them and they are key to your success, what message would you like them to hear about how it's important for both the trust fund and the operators to synergize to make this operation work properly? What message would you want to give to the operators?
Thank you. It's a very, very good question because for long they've seen us as adversaries.
How is that?
Absolutely. For, of course, raising the issue of returns for good causes. Anytime you tell an operator, keep to the spirit and letter of the provisions of the law, he finds it difficult to do that. And that is why on this platform I would like to send this appeal to them, to always look at National Lottery Trust Fund and indeed the National Lottery Regulatory Commission as partners in an effort to make sure that their own businesses thrives and flourish, and which we know is flourishing. And of course for them to see the needful in making the due returns to government, because our proposition is nothing less than empowering Nigerians and making them feel a sense of belonging. Because the end result is what you deliver to Nigerians. The resources that we put together Of course, it's meant to promote the well-being of Nigerians in every sector. But if licensees are not up and doing, even though they know they are making huge profits and are not making the due returns that is required by them as prescribed by law, then sadly something is amiss. So I would like to appeal to them to look at these two agencies as their partners, to see that whatever they do justice to the system, so that at the end of the day, we will all be at the same level.
And my final question is, what are some of your short to middle and long-term goals as the leader of this organization? Because you've been here
Absolutely.
for a long time.
Absolutely.
And now you're sitting at the helm. You get to guide. So what would you say is your short term? And then when you look at a little middle term, and then of course your long term to the end of your tenure?
Well, let's look at the way the industry is governed first, because your goals and objectives ties in with that. The first critical short term that I think we need to handle in this agency is to see that we get the right skill and expertise in some few critical areas. Meaning we have to recruit able hands that will assist the agency to deliver on its mandate.
Capacity building.
Absolutely. Once you recruit the key staff, then the next thing you develop their capacity to deliver. That is, in the short term, that's what we need to do, because without the team that you can bring together, there's no way you achieve your objective. Then in the medium term, hopefully you would want to see the agency move going forward. We want to see how we can operationalize our frameworks, area of raising awareness, of course, putting together the logistics that will enable us to intervene in all the key sectors that we've been mandated by law to do. But then, of course, in the long term, we need to see the legislation addressed, especially to do with the areas of weaknesses in the law, establishing the National Lottery Trust Fund and the National Lottery Regulatory Commission. Because in the long term, what you'll be grappling with is court cases. But if the law takes care of that, there's chance of sustaining what we are going to do and stabilizing revenues. So in a nutshell, this is what I think should be my short, medium, and long term.
It's been a pleasure. I've learned so much. I really didn't realize that the lottery business it is a business.
It is.
That it's really grown to the foothold that it has in Nigeria.
Absolutely.
And I look forward to coming back and hearing more development, more projects.
Absolutely.
And Nigerians, stay tuned, because the Lottery Trust Fund is coming to your state very soon.
Absolutely.
It's a pleasure.
Thank you,
sir.
very much, Chioma.
God bless.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Now, I'm sure you've learned so much about the lottery business. But more important, I'm sure you've enjoyed that interview. Thanks for watching. Till I come your way again, you can follow the conversation on our social media platforms. I'm Chioma Ikejiani. Bye-bye.